So good morning again. We are so excited that we have the opportunity to really ignite your inner designer today. I want to first thank you all for making yourselves available today. And my ask is that today you think about how you will be implementing your learnings in your work. So grab a little piece of paper that you have on your desk. Take a minute to write about what you want to get out of this day today. And throughout the day, write down some of the things that pop out that you really want to implement in the next couple months. I also would like to thank our TIROC core implementation team and our TIROC champions for putting this day together. They have been planning this, and listen to this, they have been planning this since November. So this day is a very special day for our TIROC champions and our core implementation team that wanted to give our organization the gift of learning today. So thank you all for putting this amazing day together. Thank you, Kana, for giving us all these amazing virtual backgrounds that we've been able to enjoy since January to get us really excited for what we're going to be learning today. Now we have a full day of amazing learning, and the most important thing is raffles. So we will also have the opportunity to do a little Pilates after lunch, but don't worry, he's going to be focusing on stretching. He's not going to be making us sweat a lot. For those of you that took Nathaniel Buckley last month for our TIROC Pilates, he's not going to make us break a sweat like he did on Wednesday for our meditations. Now, a few housekeeping things. We will be providing you with 10-minute breaks between sessions. If you want to be part of our raffles, as I mentioned prior, please come back 10 minutes at the 10-minute mark so that we can enter you to win. You will have options to choose from 3 tracks, one in the morning and one in the afternoon of your choice. And there will be an empowerment, a building, and an innovation track. Each track will have a host that will support you if you have any questions. Attached to the invite that you received is a program that will guide you through the day's events and the session options, and will tell you who the hosts for each one of those tracks are. Now, please note that some of our sessions will be live and some will be recorded throughout the day. And with that, I have the pleasure of introducing our CB architect, Ron Brown. He is our CEO and president, and he will really get us ready to innovate, to build, and empower as we ignite our inner designer. So please welcome him with a warm hand and applause. Thank you.
Thanks, Karina. Can you all hear me okay? You know, it's so funny that after 3 years, we still continue to have difficulty with our cameras and our speakers and our microphones and everything as we continue to communicate in this virtual world. So thank you, Karina. What a wonderful day. And so what are we all doing here today? Besides keeping you out of the rain, I hope. What are we doing here today? Why is this important? What's important about our efforts and these wonderful backgrounds? And what does it mean to be an inner designer? What is all of this about? When I come to work and I do my job and I get my paycheck and I go to sleep at night, and why is this all important? What does it make a difference to you? And what does it make a difference to the children and the families and the communities you're serving? So what are we doing today? We're here to learn a little bit about you, about how you can think differently, act differently. You know, as an organization, we really focus on our innovation and our efforts to be innovative. And this is something that we've brought along for some years now. And I'm most appreciative that Karina has led the charge on this, along with a whole lot of you that have been supportive and providing great leadership and input along the way. So we started this a number of years ago, if you really want to know the truth, this whole idea of trauma-informed work and trauma-informed care, years and years ago, when we started engaging on what's known as the PRIDE model of practice for our foster care system. And what PRIDE did is it taught us that children that were being removed from their homes weren't items. They're not pieces. They're humans. It changed the language, and it's work to change the language when a child is placed with another family to be supported, that other family, we look at that family in a different kind of way. We've made the language change from foster parents to resource parents, because those parents really are a resource to that child. They're not just fostering a child, they're a resource to the child, and they're a resource to the family that the child came from, because they're really helping that child understand how to deal with the issues that they've experienced in that family and in the new family, and managing the change. So they're really being resources. And it was kind of like an early impetus. And we at Children's Bureau help lead and actually train other organizations in this Pride model of practice. And out of that stemmed this kind of conceptual framework of trauma-informed work. So understanding what's at the underlying issues that individuals have. And all of us, of course, have experienced our own traumas in our life, whether they were in your household, at school, in your neighborhood, on the street, or just that person that just pulled over in front of you and made you slam on your brakes, kind of a little mini trauma, because those things cause chemical reactions in your brain. It releases cortisol. It's really technical, but it releases cortisol in your brain, and you get this fight or flight response, and it angsts you up. You get angst up, and that's what happens with trauma on a regular basis. And we've learned through the work that's about adverse childhood experiences that chronic trauma in children has long-lasting effects on those children, including shortening their lifespan. So thinking about trauma work has really opened us up. And so thinking about what happens to the families and to the children that we're working with and to the communities that have experienced trauma, as we get these ridiculously, almost seems like every other week, news about shootings in a school. Think about the trauma in that community, let alone the trauma to the children that happen to, the parents that happen to. All these things are traumatic experiences, and yet we've taken this a step further with Karina's help and leadership and this group's leadership. We've taken this to think about resilience-oriented care. So you are not the trauma that you experience. Our children and our families are not the trauma. They're not a trauma. So we want to take this language and change this language so it's not about you having this T on your forehead because you've got this trauma. It's like, how do we look at the strengths in you? And how do we work with you in a way that acknowledges the experiences that you've had, so that we can move those forward and build on the strengths that you've created for yourself in order to be resilient around that trauma? How do we take this another step further? How do we grow that further? So this whole idea of trauma-informed, resilient-oriented care is, for us, in some ways, a more innovative way of thinking about how we work with children and families and communities so that they, too, feel like they were felt. So you all know what it means to be in a room and have said something that was important to you, and people around you just kind of nod and go, yeah. You don't feel felt, do you? You don't feel like anybody really heard you. You're feeling like, I said something that was important to me and nobody seemed to get it. What the hell's going on here? I really need I need to feel felt. So I want to feel like somebody felt what I had to say. And you might even, after that meeting, check in with somebody. Hey, when I said this, did you understand what I was saying? Did that resonate for you? Was that important to you? Because you should know that was really important to me, and I actually stretched myself out. So I want you all to take a step back for a second, and I'm going to give you about 30 seconds. And I want you to just kind of close your eyes and think about what it felt like at a time when you really expressed concern or something about you, and you actually feel heard. You felt heard at that moment. So close your eyes, take a second, what did it feel like when somebody recognized you for you, right? What was important about that moment? You guys are rocking it. Yeah, throw it into the chat. Exactly. What did it feel like? Throw those into the chat. So let's take a look at some of those. Valued, loved, understood, safe, powerful. Someone cares about me. Seen. Look at you guys just rocking it. So appreciated, honored. I'm sorry, I can't read them all really fast because they're just zipping by. Heard. Validated is really important. Someone generally cares about me. Calm and relaxed. Safe. Importance of feeling safe. Affirmed. Respected. Loved. I matter. Acknowledged. Heard. Seen. Yes. Great. Keep it going. Wow. Okay. So thank you. Thank you. You now understand the importance of today. You now get why we're doing what we're doing today. Because every child and every family and every community that you work with, every partner in this organization, every fellow employee, because we work with each other, wants to feel the same thing. All those wonderful, gorgeous words that you just shared on this screen. I'm not nuts. Thank you. Yes. Yes, the building blocks for resilience. Yay! Because until we feel that way, we're not very resilient. We're not very, it takes us down. It doesn't take us up. It takes us down when we're not heard. It takes us down. And that in itself spins us out of control. And so having control over your life is what we're trying to work on today. And why, in some components, why it's so important to the work that you do each and every day with those around you. And I'm going to start trying to talk about those around you more than the children and the communities and the families that you serve. Because in many ways, it's just as valid for us to be thinking this way with our coworkers, with the ones that we run into each and every day. But it also means that we have to understand the context of the people delivering the message, right? So I use this this framework all the time because it kind of helps me. I live in Long Beach, and I drive into our Magnolia office on a regular basis, and I drive on the freeway, and the freeways are actually worse now than they were before the pandemic. Amazingly enough, I have no idea why. Maybe it's because everybody's going in on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Maybe I should start going in on Monday and Friday. But they're worse now than they ever were. And people are driving maybe even more aggressively than they have in the past. I don't know if that's really the way, or maybe it's just my response to having had a couple of years of not many people on the road when I used to go in. But what happens on the freeway is, people are cutting you off, changing lanes without turn indicators, not really paying attention to anybody else. We all know you can see the person that's kind of slowing down, speeding up, going from side to side. We used to think that they were intoxicated of some sort. Now we just think they're on the cell phone. Or they're in a new hybrid car that has a computer in the front, and they're paying more attention to the computer than they are the driving. All the rest is, but you get what I'm saying is that, people are out there and people are people. So to manage our own behaviors and to create my own resilience, because again, you know, we have this thing in the back of our brain called an amygdala, and it releases this chemical called cortisol, and it gets this fight or flight system, and it gives you that, and that's what drives people's anxieties up a lot. And what happens when you get into a circumstance where somebody cuts you off and you slam on your brakes and you're all anxiety, and that cortisol goes boof, and you get all this angst, and, you know, hopefully you're not prone to hand gestures these days in the car, because hand gestures don't do anybody any good, as we all know. And you may shout at somebody or yell, and hopefully your windows are up and that they don't hear you, because we don't know how people are going to respond. But my point in all of this is to say, do you think that person that just cut you off and did this to you actually did this to you? Do they know you? Do they have any clue who you are? Are they focused on you in any way, shape, or form? Not really. As a matter of fact, what they blatantly showed you is they're not focused on you, and that they're really just focused on them. So for us to think about this idea of understanding the impact that others have on us and how we move forward in the world, how we engage with each other, is understanding that we all come to the table with our own selves, our own isms, our own being, who we are, what we think, and we're a collection of our experiences and the systems that function around us and have functioned around us all our lives. And those systems are varied. You know, they're in addition to you know, the economic systems and political systems and socioeconomic systems, social systems. There are social justice systems. There's political. There's components that have to do with who we are and our own identity systems and our family systems or lack of family systems. All of those things bear in upon us and create our thinking to be who we are. And we respond to those, and we respond traditionally in the same way that we've learned over time. And so in some ways, those systems can be traumatic. And I use this example all the time about a child that has to walk a mile out of their way to get to school every day and a mile out of their way to get home every day, because it's a gang territory and they don't want to be in the gang. And yet they're being enticed and maybe demanded to be in the gang. So that's a trauma that person experiences every day. Or it might be the trauma of not having food on the table every day and having and needing to go to school just to eat, and worried that others are going to see that and understand that you live in a poor family. So all these things kind of make up who we are. And so we focus on ourselves in trying to manage that piece and manage our childhood experiences in a way that kind of focuses and allows us to go forward. And we build resilience around that over time, or we don't. We get moved past some things, but we never move past everything. It really does lie within us. And so how do we help ourselves move past those things that we can impact, let alone the ones that we can't? And as a child, there are very few that we could have impacted. And you can't impact that person that cut you off. Because one, they didn't do something to you, they were doing something for them because they had a need that they needed to get met, whether it was just to change lanes or they were drifting or something. But recognizing that it wasn't done to you is an important component of being resilient, by the way. It wasn't done to you specifically because you're a faceless person behind a windshield to that other individual. They don't even know you. They don't recognize you. There is nothing about you that was important to them that says, I want to cut that person off. Perhaps unless you had done it to them before, 3 miles back. But the idea being, how do we look at ourselves in a way that says, okay, here I am in the circumstance. Was this done to me? Can I manage this moment so that it doesn't escalate? Because what happens is this thinking. If you're trying to pull on the freeway and the freeway's packed and nobody lets you in, and you finally squeeze in and you come up to the next on-ramp and somebody's trying to get in, do you let them in? Do you let that person in? You know, do you really like, oh, nobody let me in, I'm not letting that person in? Or I was able to squeeze my way in because somebody was looking at their phone and I got in front of them. I'm not going to let this person in. It's that same kind of thing. It passes along, right? Naomi, I let them in. Exactly. But when something happens to us like that, our amygdala goes, the cortisol goes, and it continues in our body. And yes, Thelma, it does depend on the mood. And so, but it continues on the body, and that angst carries forward. So the whole idea of how to let that go means, geez, do I give grace to that individual that needs to get on because they need to get on the freeway just as much as I did? Or do I carry this forward? And I'm not saying it's a yes or no, or you're a bad person if you don't. I'm saying that the experience and how we experience our lives in general and things that happen to us carries forward to things that we do to others going in front of us. So again, somebody pulls in front of me, I get upset. Do I get upset and have a hand gesture? Do I yell at the guy? Do I zoom up behind him? Do I go past him and hit on my brakes? Do I do all that like road ragey thing? Or do I just take a second to reflect, to catch myself, to be resilient in this little stupid example of trauma that I'm trying to share with you? Do I let myself have the grace to say, this person didn't know me, didn't do that to me. It wasn't personal, is really what I'm trying to get. It really wasn't personal. And if it's not personal, don't make it personal. And if it's not personal, don't let myself get out of control. And how do I kind of be resilient in that moment? And why I'm sharing all of this with you is that we carry these forward, and we carry these to the people that we walk in the office. I'm running late for a meeting and I get into the meeting at work and I'm all and how do I give myself the 30 seconds that I need, the minute that I need to do what Karina did, whether it's earlier, whether it's rolling your neck to relax, to roll my shoulders, to stop and breathe, to take a second and catch myself, to give myself the opportunity to be resilient in the moment, is what I need to do first for me. Because if I don't do it for me, I'm not going to do it for anybody else. Chances are, if I catch myself, I may. And if you, like some of our people have pointed out, are better than I am sometimes and say, I'm going to let them in, or, it all depends on the moment. You gotta take a second to ground yourself within yourself and to be calm with yourself, and to go back to that moment that I talked about at the very beginning. Is, what did it feel like when someone actually heard you? What did it feel like when somebody actually understood you? That's not going to happen on the freeway. That's just an example. But it does happen in the office, in a classroom, in a conference room, out in a park with a child, or out in a community, in a home with a family. It happens there all the time. How do we give ourselves the understanding that we need to give ourselves grace first, right? Because if you don't give yourself grace, you can't give it to somebody else. Give ourselves grace first, and then hand it over to the people that we're working with and work with each and every day. How do we take the steps to build ourselves an opportunity to care for them in ways that they feel, just like you said you felt earlier when I asked you to put it in the chat. So why is this important? So why is all of this important? Ron's just yammering on about self-care and empathy and grace. Why is this important? Because the work that you do each and every day is vital to the people you connect with. And those people may be coworkers, because not everybody has direct service, but it's vital to each and every one of us. We don't function alone in this organization. Every one of you is important to us functioning, forwarding our mission, valuing the ideas that we create, that you came to the table, why you joined this organization in the first place, to make a difference in this world. And so giving ourselves first the grace to understand where we're at before we step into maybe a quagmire or maybe a brilliant moment, but giving ourselves a chance to get centered, to get ourselves together, to be perhaps even hopeful where there might not be a whole lot. Perhaps it's a understanding that I'm going into a difficult conversation and being ready for that, not stealing yourself necessarily, being calm and collected within yourself so that you can be calm and collected to help somebody else. And that's why it's important, because what you do each and every day matters. And what you take to the table each and every day has value. And it impacts you just as much as it impacts the other person. So going back to the very beginning of this conversation, when I asked you what that moment felt like, when you felt heard, when you felt, what do you think the person that told you they heard you, the person on the other side, felt like? What do you think it felt like for that person to say, I understood what you were trying to say? What is it? Take a second, close those eyes now, one more time. We're going to do this one more time. What do they think it felt like for the person that was actually giving that message to you? What were they experiencing? So you felt heard. What did they feel? Connected, humbled, empathy, compassion, self-awareness. They love me, validated, kindness, connected, peace, trusted. Exactly. I can't read them all. They're going fast. Aware. Excellent. Point taken. Thank you. Yes. A sense of pride, empathy, protecting me. Yes, like they can actually relate. So we'll stop there. Thank you for everybody that put it in, because there's like a lot of you on this call. Like we haven't had this many people on a call in a long, long time. So thank you. And if you want to keep going go for it. But I'm going to say, you know, the sense of connection that comes when you feel heard with the person that heard you is actually an exceptional thing, right? You create, like, for lack of, I'm going to get all woojy on you, but it's like auras blending. You kind of have this connection with somebody. You feel heart, and you feel it both in your heart, but also in your solar plexus, like right down below where your rib cage is. You get this feeling of connectedness that you don't always get with other people. And there's something of value in that. And, you know, these words kind of share that value that comes with being really heard by somebody and hearing somebody and understanding somebody creates a bond that is far beyond a hi, how you doing? It's far beyond let me help you with your problem, but let me understand who you are as an individual and give you a little bit of myself as an individual in that process. So it's actually a sharing of who we are as people and a connection that transcends any of our demographics that we can think about. So, you know, we can label anybody with any label, but that connection transcends labels. So really, what we're trying to work on today is for you to kind of look at your own inner architect, your own inner designer. What does it mean when you come to work every day? And give you some tools about how you can work with yourself to connect, to give yourself first grace, to be who you are, and the collection of all your experiences, the traumas that you've experienced too, as well as all the joys and everything else, because that's who makes you up. And then bringing that to the table to connect with somebody else. And our base of people that we work with tend to have some traumas that need to be surfaced. And they need to be acknowledged, because until they're not acknowledged, it's really hard to build resilience. Just going back to that first conversation about how we were heard. By being heard, then we can actually move past the moment. We don't carry it as far. And that's what builds that resilience. First, we're heard. I can put it on the table. And now as it's on the table, I can build my own resilience. I can build my own strength, and I can build my own sense of self beyond the label of the trauma or the experience of the trauma that I carry forward. It never actually 100% goes away because it's part of who I am. It's part of my makeup, but I can put it aside and build strength behind it. I can actually, in some cases, learn from it. So the goal here is for us to learn about how to think about trauma-informed care, but more importantly, resilience-oriented care. So inspiring your inner architect, your innovator, what you bring to the table individually, and all of us bring a different skill set. How do we bring that to the table? How can you bring what you have and your experiences to the table and help others? And those others, of course, go beyond the children, families, and communities we're serving, but to each other, giving each other grace for the moment, giving each other acknowledgement for the struggles. It doesn't mean always tolerance, right? Because we bring things to the table that maybe we need to reserve for a different moment. But it does mean that we have to give each other a moment of grace and then have a conversation. Is this the right place? Is this the right time? And can we actually take and move this moment to a better place and time to deal with an issue? Or let's find a time where we can have a conversation about that. And so understanding how you can work with each other and work with all of the people around us that interface in our everyday lives and create an importance around that is what we're going to be doing today. And it takes this word that we've resurrected maybe a decade ago. And it's something that's really critical to our TIROC movement. And it's kind of simple. And you're going to go, really, Ron Bellick? Yes, it takes intentionality. We have to be intentional. We have to catch the moment. And that actually, to be truthful, like the person that cut you off, is the hardest thing in the world to do, is to be intentional in the moment. You can be intentional later, but being intentional in the moment takes practice. You have to practice this. It's a skill. It's not something that comes naturally. You can't go to a piano and say, I want to play a concerto right now without ever having played the piano. It takes practice. Fortunately, it doesn't take the same kind of practice as a concerto would, but it takes practice to be intentional in our work. To catch myself on the freeway, and I don't do it every time, that person didn't intend to cut me off. I kept my gesture down. I didn't yell as loud as I might have. It's intentionality. So building this is understanding that I have to practice this process of being a resilient, oriented, caring individual, whether it's with my family, my coworkers, or the community that we're serving. So what we're trying to do today is to start this process build that intentionality, the next one's going to be talking about building trust for our communities with government entities of all things, because government entities speak of what? Government. They're this institution, and we hear from our community members on a regular basis that we don't trust institutions. It's why we do so well in our family resource centers, by the way, because people feel comfortable there, but people don't always feel comfortable in institutions. And government entities are kind of carry a label. Think about how those social workers feel when they're tasked with taking a child from a home, because that's how they have to perceive it. When in actuality, in some ways, they think they're saving the child. And yet the trauma that's all enwrapped in all of that is huge. I absolutely could never do that job. It's not something, it takes a special individual to be able to do that job and to live with themselves and understand how to manage that every day. So what we're trying to figure out here is to understand how to be resilient oriented, to have some basic learning across this organization. And we've got champions across the organization, so you're going to hear from some of them, and to really think about how we can be intentional and to really spark your creativity in that intentionality. So let me give you a quick example, because I still have a couple minutes, right, Karina? Yes, I have a couple minutes of intentionality. And so it's kind of crazy. It may not make sense in this framework, but I'm going to try and share with you. So, there's these thing called protective factors. And we know that if these protective factors are evident in a home, that parents are less likely to maltreat their child. And this was done with some research that came out in about the mid 2000s, and by the Center of the Study of Social Policy. And building protective factors became very important to the work that we do in our family resource centers, right? So they're talking about parental resiliency as one of those protective factors, social connections, concrete services in times of need, understanding of child development are protective factors. If these are all present in the home, again, parents are less likely to abuse their children. And at that time, we'd open Magnolia and we have this great room, and we were going to do family nights in there, and we're going to bring a movie and have parents come so that they have some time. We're creating time for parents to engage with their children around a movie in this family center. And of course, back in those days, we'd have pizza and maybe sodas. We don't do those anymore. Sodas no more. But we bring the families in from the community, and they have a chance to engage with their children, and so they get to see Finding Nemo and blah blah blah. And we create this, and then we thought, well, wait a minute. We have this wonderful opportunity while these families are here, and we're trying to create this really nice connection between the family and creating that connection. We should be looking at how do we create social connectedness among the people that are all in the room. So the next time we did this, we said, well, who lives on this block? Raise your hand. And geez, we should have a little something for you all to see, connect over here. All those people that live over here, why don't you go over here and talk and introduce yourselves? Because we know that people living even in the same apartment building don't know each other. So how do we create social connectedness? And gee, you have a 4-year-old and a 3-year-old. I happen to have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and I might need some help. And so now when you need to go do something, I might watch your kids for a half an hour and so now we've created social connectedness. And that took what? It took intentionality. It took us a little bit of creativity to think beyond ourselves and how we always did things, to think about how things might be, how things could be. And so we are here trying to activate your inner designer, your own individual designer, to say, how do you want to be trauma informed and resilience oriented as you provide care for all those around you? That's the whole point of today. And I go back to the very beginning when I told you to close your eyes. What did it feel like? And how do we be intentional to make those around us feel that same way that you put all those words into the chat room? How do we make them feel that way so that they can be resilience oriented? Because that's the start. And so that I want to stop, and I wanted to say thank you all so very, very much for sticking with me for this half an hour, and for paying attention. Most of you that I could see were paying attention, and for being here today. This is really the next step in our movement. We've got a trained team. Now we're going to be training you and working with you. And this is going to be part of who we are as an agency, who we are in our delivery system, who we are as we talk to each other. That's the piece. We have to embed that and acknowledge we're all different. We all bring to the table all of our isms, whatever those are. And we got to give grace to each other. And this is the start of it. And I thank you all for your presence today. And I'll be here with you. Take care.
Thank you, Ron. This is why Ron is our architect, and he has set the foundation for the house that we continue to build here at Children's Bureau. Just in case you don't get it, there's a lot of architect design language, a bunch of puns that are going to be dropped today. And as I listened to Ron just set this framework, I heard a lot of great learning. I heard about taking that grace, giving yourself grace and being your authentic self. Feeling heard and seen and creating a sense of belonging is what we want to do at Children's Bureau, and recognizing yourself. A lot of amazing words came out of the chat that really got us ready for this day and inspired us. And doing this work is really about the ripple effect that we're creating. So he really has set us up for the day. And as this is our third year doing our TIROC movement, and our theme is Beyond These Walls, I think it's really set us up to not only set up our own house here at Children's Bureau, but how can we help others design and create similar frameworks so that we can continue to create that impact. So it's a great way to start the day.